Cinematic universes are everywhere these days. You can't get away from them. Why then is it only really the MCU that you ever really hear about? I mean, you've got the DCU, formerly the DCEU, which has been kind of a floundering mess for the past, 10 years or so? You have the Monsterverse, which occasionally kicks out another film and isn't so much a cinematic universe as just a series of sequels. That whole cinematic universe shtick kind of went out of the window when Godzilla first fought Kong, and now it looks like they're in a series together. You had the Dark Universe from Universal Pictures, which died a death after a single really poorly received film, and there's any number of different cinematic universes trying to get off the ground. And while the prospect of an interconnected universe is definitely lucrative and an interesting one, the ability to put characters from different films into other films and intertwine plot lines, it naturally is a breeding ground for fantastic storytelling. I mean, that's why comic books have done so well and why the MCU has done so well. But other than sheer complexity of a 10 plus year universe of films, I think there's one major curse surrounding cinematic universes, and that is simply the fact that for all the aforementioned storytelling potential they have, each individual film is a little bit stunted in its storytelling abilities. I mean, you look at phase 1 of the MCU, it was great. Everybody holds it up as like one of the best parts of the MCU. And then the stories needed to start meshing together. And while that led to the Avengers and Civil War and some really fantastic stuff, it also led to Thor the Dark World, for instance. And yes, I guess it did start as early as Thor the Dark World, where the overarching plot lines of the universe took precedence over the individual film. They had the Infinity Stones that they needed to establish, and the story of Dark Elves and whatever the hell was going on in that film kind of got pushed to the side a little bit. And that's also why the first Ant-Man, for as simple a film as it was as enjoyable as it was, and Quantumania, despite the fact I genuinely kind of enjoyed it, wasn't nearly as good. It's because Quantumania wasn't trying to tell the story of a father trying to rescue and save his relationship with his daughter after being away for 5 years, or perceived to be being away for 5 years. It was about setting Kang up. And while Kang was a pretty damn good villain in that film, he did also suffer from the weight of expectation. I mean, Kang Dynasty and everything's already been announced, and so we're expecting like, oh my god, Kang's going to be this absolutely fearsome opponent, and he's not going to be defeated at the end of the film. At the end of the film, he was defeated, or it seems like at least like he was defeated. And it might have been better if they hadn't have announced the Kang Dynasty, and it was perceived as, well, for general audiences, that Kang was a standalone villain. I know for the comic book fans, they would have known he's going to be the next big bad, and then we've got Loki going on as well, but not everybody watches the TV shows. But I think there was something about the Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars, the names of the films actually got leaked, so they just went and announced them just to stop the leak in its tracks. But yeah, there are several examples of that happening throughout the MCU to differing degrees. I mean, Captain Marvel, for instance, I thought that was a pretty decent film, but it was a little bit marred by the fact that it spent so much time trying to filling the gaps of the story of the Tesseract. Although it's not to say that it can't be pulled off well. I mean, look at Guardians of the Galaxy, the first one. That was all about introducing the Power Stone, but it wasn't set up as, oh my god, this is an Infinity Stone, it's going to lead to this endgame scenario. I mean, it was naturally tied into the Infinity Stone lore, but it was weaved much more carefully into the narrative of Guardians of the Galaxy so that the story of the film itself didn't suffer, like for the Dark World did, for instance. But I think the main problem that we're seeing now is that Endgame was the end of the MCU to an extent. It's kind of had a soft reboot from Phase 4 onwards, and Phase 4 was kind of about setting up new plot threads, trying to start off where Phase 1 effectively started off again. But the main complaint about Phase 4 is that there's been very little interconnectivity. I mean, I say that and then No Way Home literally connected with other Spider-Man franchises from the past, which is was absolutely awesome, don't get me wrong, but that's a whole other thing going on. But now that the fans know what's going on, know what a cinematic universe is, it's like, even though Marvel tried to reset and like take it from the ground up again, the fans feel like there should be more interconnectivity and just like plowing on straight from phase 4. I guess what I'm trying to say is that the cinematic universe format is a double-edged blade. It can set up absolutely wonderful interconnective storytelling, and we get films like Civil War, which would have meant absolutely nothing had we not had a whole bunch of films setting up all of those characters beforehand. So to see them then come and clash was just amazing. And then there's No Way Home, like I said. They literally tied in the MCU with the Spider-Man universes of Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield and put them all into one giant multiverse. So I'm a bit torn on whether to say that it's Marvel's fault for thinking that they could kind of try and reset to a new beginning and try and work on from there, or the fans' fault for expecting too much, because now they know what an interconnected cinematic universe is. They want that all the time. They want different heroes popping into other people's films. And I guess that is what happened with the comics, and Marvel's answer to that so far has been pretty much to crowbarring cameos. Such as with Multiverse of Madness. I adored the fact they put the Illuminati in, but they were actually completely useless. They didn't do a damn thing. But I think they were primarily there so that fans could point and say, I know that character. Now, I still will hold up Multiverse of Madness as one of the best films in Phase 4, simply because of how different it was. It felt very... it felt like Sam Raimi. It felt like Spider-Man 2, and I love that. And I guess that might just be my nostalgia kicking in again, but there was a lot of difference in that film. They tried a whole lot of different stuff, and it worked. But my opinion is that if Marvel want to course correct on this whole lackluster response to Phase 4 and everything, they need to step back from trying to build that overarching universe back up too quickly, no matter what the fans say, and focus on good storytelling within individual films, such as the new Guardians film, which is, without a doubt, one of the best films since Endgame. I think my ranking would probably be, for films come out since Endgame, MCU films that is, No Way Home, naturally, that's at the top, Multiverse of Madness and Guardians kind of tie for second. I kind of want to watch Guardians again, I only saw it once, but the storytelling on show there was the kind of caliber that I would expect from a veteran. Well, it was what I expect from James Gunn, but it was also what I expect from people writing for the MCU. And it didn't compromise by trying to fit into the large universe. It was a standalone film, and I think that's what I mean by when I said earlier about the Power Stone in Guardians 1. You could watch the 3 Guardians films without seeing any of the other MCU and be largely fine. Yeah, there's the whole Gamora situation where, Gamora died in Infinity War and whatnot, but in Guardians 3 they did it in such a way that you could just assume something had happened off screen if you wanted to. Whereas with Thor: The Dark World, it felt very much like this sequel has been overtaken in order to, fit into the larger scheme of the overarching plotline. And I guess that's probably why the Monsterverse is still plodding along, because they don't exactly have an overarching plotline anymore. I'm not entirely sure what their plan was, whether they were going to have like other standalone films alongside like Kong and Godzilla, and then have like a Royal Rumble with all the Godzilla monsters, but as I say, it's largely fallen into just being sequels. You can't even really call it an interconnected universe anymore, and the DCU's gone so far off the rails that they've brought in James Gunn to try and set it right, and I think they're going to have like a reset on the entire universe. I think that's probably what the Flash film's going to do. A film which I'm kind of in two minds about because of the whole Ezra Miller situation, and the same goes for MCU actually, with was it Jonathan Majors situation. But I know it's completely off topic, but I've seen a few people say this actually. If they do end up firing Jonathan Majors, they should retcon in the High Evolutionary as a Kang variant, because damn, that guy was so menacing and so cool, and I enjoyed Kang, I really did, but it was the best part of a fairly mediocre film. The High Evolutionary was an absolute joy to watch in a pretty damn good film, so when you compare that, he comes out on top, I suppose. He wears a similar colour scheme. He's wearing like purple, and he has kind of similar powers. He even does that whole like explosive like bubble thing that Kang did as well. So yeah, I think people would be cool with the High Evolutionary being retconned as a Kang variant. But anyway, I'm getting very off topic. But I just wanted to talk about the way cinematic universes seem to be torn between overarching storytelling for the long term and individual storytelling within their individual films. If you have any opinions on that topic, then please do leave them in the comments below, and I will see you next time.